It is 6 o'clock, and I welcome you to this evening's governing body meeting. If you will please stand as you're able.
The chambers are muted?
The mayor's here.
I know.
Oh, okay. I think she's trying to talk.
We're muted, Taylor.
Oh, you're right. My bad. Sorry.
There we go.
Okay. All right, there we go.
Mayor, did you want to do the
No,
introduction?
I was muted. That's my bad.
You mean open up the meeting?
Yeah.
Yes, for a while.
Well, okay, well, I was told I was presiding, so I didn't know what steps you were going to take. Thank you.
No worries. We now call the meeting to order. I'm sorry for the lack of communication there. I surprised everybody by showing up here today. If we could all pay attention to Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala for the invocation to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight's prayer will be delivered by Reverend Rachel Schald. She is the lead pastor at Oakland Church of the Nazarene here in Topeka, serving in that capacity since March 2020. She received her education through Mid-America Nazarene University and was ordained in 2018. Pastor Rachel enjoys reading, gardening, baking, and exploring Topeka with her husband Joseph, their daughter Caroline, and their very goofy dog, Bella. Come on up. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Councilwoman, Council, Madam Mayor, and esteemed guests. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. God of all goodness, we give you thanks today. We give you thanks for this moment, and we give you thanks that you have created us to live together in community. Lord, we thank you that you give us one another, and I thank you especially for these persons gathered here who have committed to serve this your community, this community in which we live. Lord, I pray that you would encourage them in this task of serving and leading with the mind of love and compassion for one another and for their neighbors. Lord, we also ask that you would give wisdom and discernment as they are called upon to make the sometimes difficult decisions in order to lead well in this community. Lord, we pray that this time would most of all reflect your love for each person gathered here and around Topeka and throughout the world. Lord, we give you thanks. We ask all of this in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We proceed to the roll call.
Mayor De La Isla,
Here.
Council Members Hiller,
Here.
Valdivia Alcala,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Emerson,
Here.
Padilla,
here.
Nager,
Here.
Dobler, Duncan,
Oh,
and
here?
Lesser.
There we go.
We have 10 present.
Deputy Mayor proceeds with the proclamation.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I have a proclamation to read, and if I can have Bill Persinger join me. We'll come around here, Bill.
Certainly.
You're center stage.
He's got them.
Okay, proclamation by the mayor. Whereas good mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas services are accessible and affordable for those in need in Topeka, Shawnee, and Shawnee County, Kansas, and whereas with treatment, those individuals with mental health conditions can recover and lead full, productive lives, whereas individuals who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color have additional mental health challenges, such as, for example, the social determinants of health related to the neighborhood or community where one lives, language and cultural barriers between providers and consumers, and the effects of chronic stress related to discrimination, And whereas there are significant disparities that place individuals who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color at greater risk for serious mental health problems, such as, for example, decreased access to quality mental health care for all individuals and communities, including prevention, treatment, and recovery services for mental health and substance use disorders. And whereas each business, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizen can, through their proactive individual and collective actions, promote good mental health and recovery for persons in the racial minority population. And now, therefore, Michelle De La Isla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do proclaim the month of July 2021 as BIPOC, B-I-P-O-C, Mental Health Awareness Month. And I encourage the citizens of Topeka to support all the mental health organizations in our community who work to promote wellness. In witness thereof, I, Michelle De La Isla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do hereby affix an official signature in the official seal of the City of Topeka, Kansas, and this day of July 13, 2021. Congratulations.
Deputy Mayor.
And Bill, you have a few words.
I do. Deputy Mayor gave you permission to speak for 20 minutes. I promise I only use 19. I want to say thank you to everyone, taxpayers for supporting what we do, and the city governing body for supporting our co-responder program, a relationship that is vital to our operation, and our alternative sentencing court here in the city of Topeka. Our detox program, we simply would not have an alcohol and drug abuse detox program were it not for the city of Topeka. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. So, Deputy Mayor, Mayor, and members of the council, thank you so much from myself as the chief executive at Vallejo, but our governing board. And speaking of my bosses, some of them are here. If you'd stand up and acknowledge yourself, introduce yourselves. Linda, you want to start just real quickly and say hi and tell them?
Hi, Linda Oaks. I'm the Vallejo board and retired from the health department.
Lisa.
Lisa Cradle, Washington University, serve on the Vallejo board.
Nicole Graves, Washburn University, I serve on CRP.
Pat? Oh, I'm sorry, Gary. Go ahead.
Gary Cushenberry, Senior Vice President, Core First Bank. I'm on the foundation board.
Pat Vega, Program Manager for CIP, Healthcare Board. Kristen Stock, I'm Program Manager for Case Management Services and Support Employment Services.
And did we get everybody who's here? I want to make sure. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, the staff, the governing board, and the management want to thank you. And I want you to know that we're doing everything we can to keep the doors wide open to anybody and everybody who needs our help. Many of our programs, 24 hours a day. We've very intentionally done diversity, equality, and inclusive training for staff and managers, and will be for the governing board as well. And have just want to make sure that everybody, regardless, can come and get help at Vallejo. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, sir.
Bill, before you leave.
Yes, sir.
I just want to follow up with just a few comments. In my term on the council, and before that, I knew Bill and of the work that his organization does. And I have to admit, I'm really pleased how they interact with the community. They are kind of intertwined in a lot of efforts and projects that we have brought to them, and he's never hesitated to take on a topic or a project and offer every assistance he can. Most recently, when we were talking about the issue of homelessness and how you have stepped up along with others in the community to help us out. So again, I really do appreciate everything that you and your organization does.
Mike, thanks for having us at the
You
table.
bet.
It's a pleasure.
You
We
bet.
want to be anywhere else. Thank you so much.
Less than 20 minutes, too.
You're doing good, Bill.
Thank you, Mayor.
And thank you for your amazing board to be there. I love to see the Washburn University presence. We now proceed to appointments, if the clerk would read.
A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Jim Ramos to the Topeka Shawnee County Public Library Board of Trustees for a term ending April 30, 2025.
The mayor does not vote on this issue. However, I do ask, what is the pleasure of the governing body?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Councilwoman Ortiz and Councilman Dolber seconding the motion. So the clerk gets to choose who she wants to use. Additional comments or questions?
Mayor, if I could,
Yes, sir.
I wonder if we could invite Mr. Ramos up for some in-depth questioning. No, I'm just
You know,
kidding. What a great guy.
I second that. I second
Willingness
that.
to do this.
I don't know that I knew what I was doing when the library now is going to have to deal with them, but it's okay. I think that great comments to record for the record. So we have a motion and we have a second. If there's no additional comments, questions, or harassments for Mr. Ramos, we proceed by voting.
Council members Lesser,
Let me think. Yes.
Pillar,
Yes.
Valdivia Akla,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
and Duncan.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Motion carries. Mr. Ramos, if you could please stand and be recognized by the governing body. Thank you for being lighthearted as you are and allowing us to have a little bit of fun with you this evening. We're very proud of you having chosen to participate as a trustee of the library. It is a board with a lot of responsibility. For those who don't know this, you could now also be upset at Mr. Ramos if the library changes the mill levy, whereas the city hasn't raised it in 9 years. So.
Welcome.
But it is a delight to have you on the board, Mr. Ramos. Thank you for your service to your community.
Jim, do you have anybody from the board here with you? If you could stand and introduce them, it'd be.
Jim Edwards, I chair the Board of Trustees.
Okay.
I'm Thad Martin, I'm the interim CEO.
Okay. Well, congratulations, Jim. Thank you for being here.
Presentation, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, I'm introducing from the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, Rudy Klopfer. He is the Director of the Eastern Kansas Healthcare System, and he's here to talk about the VA tonight.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor and Deputy Mayor and council members. I'm grateful to be here this evening. And I also want to thank those who are veterans within the room. Thank you for your service as well. I have the great opportunity to lead this organization here in Topeka and Leavenworth, and I'll give you a little bit of that background of who Eastern Kansas is. But as you know, we get to take care of the veterans within Eastern Kansas and some up in Northwest Missouri as well. As you see this map, Comrie O'Neill VA Medical Center is here in Topeka. Dwight D. Eisenhower VA Medical Center is in Leavenworth. I also have 8 community-based clinics, 2 up in Northwest Missouri, and the other 6 are across Eastern Kansas. They're in Junction City, Lawrence, Fort Scott, Chanute, and Garnett. Those are part-time clinics. And then Wyandotte, Platte City, Missouri, and St. Joseph, Missouri. Our foundation pillars are based around quality and safety, access to care, financial stewardship, I'll come back to those other 2, the veteran experience, and employee engagement. Productivity, efficiency, and workload capture is from my boss and across our region, which includes the state of Kansas, state of Missouri, and some in Indiana as well, and Illinois, is productivity, efficiency, and workload, making sure that we are capturing all the workload that we provide to veteran care at all of our facilities. And so we've been focusing on that over the past several years, but even more this year and into future years. Our budget is based upon a capitated environment. What that means is, as we take care of veterans today, we'll get money for those veterans we take care of in 2 years. So the budget that we're receiving now occurred 2 years ago on the veterans that we took care of. So depending upon what type of services we provide, and what intense services we provide, whether it's behavioral health, primary care, surgery, and there is an algorithm nationally that allows monies per type of service we receive that in 2 years. And so unlike other private hospitals, they can receive that money right then and there that year. We have to look at it in 2 years and in arrears. Let's do this one. So our strategic direction for this year and the next couple of years, we again review our strategic plan every year and make some changes, is first of all increase veterans receiving care at Eastern Kansas. I found one campaign is happening right now. It's an outreach. We actually, across Eastern Kansas, have a market penetration of over 50, close to 60% of those who are veterans who are eligible for care, receive care, which is really high across the VA. But we know that there are still some who aren't receiving care. So we are have an outreach, and my employees are out talking with veteran friends if they're not receiving care to come and receive care from us. Virtual care modalities, it's changed a bit with COVID-19, as you can well imagine. And we still have some opportunity to do similar FaceTime, as you would well imagine, in care to our veterans across Eastern Kansas and some of our rural areas. And it's working out quite well for us. We want to make sure that we have the appropriate number of beds based upon the workload that we're taking care of. And so we looked at our ICU, medical, surgical, and behavioral health beds across both of those campuses. And we have upwards of 200 beds across our campus in all of these areas. Community Living Center, we have at both locations. In Leavenworth, a greater number of beds in Topeka here. And then we have mental health residential rehabilitation programs. Those are inpatient programs. Domiciliary beds in Leavenworth. It's a transitional housing on our campus there, and we'll prepare our veterans to go back out into the workforce and find their own housing as well. PTSD inpatient program in Topeka, substance abuse inpatient program in Topeka, a psychiatric recovery and wellness program also inpatient in Topeka. Each of those programs are anywhere from 4 weeks to 6 weeks program, and then we actually tie them into some outpatient services that we provide. And it's this proclamation today, we work with the community very well within all services. We know that we can't do this alone in providing services to our veterans because they live all across Eastern Kansas, and so we work with the communities as well. And so we tie that in after an inpatient stay, our outpatient services, but also within the community. We've assessed our capability of internal services. We've talked about our emergency department becoming an urgent care center. I will come back to that. We're looking at our recreation services, looking at keeping care within the VA as appropriate, again, based upon our productivity and capacity that we have. And we've done a deep dive in many of our areas regarding staffing, radiology, laboratory, administrative areas, and all of our areas. We're also expanding services to our community clinics. So you had seen those 8 clinics we have. We want to take some additional services out there so our veterans don't have to travel as far. Physical therapy, other specialty services as general surgery, follow-up, podiatry care, chiropractic care and whole health, audiology, and behavioral health services. And we're looking at other services as well. We have a market assessment that occurs every 2 years across the region. And so we actually see where the number of our veterans are moving to or living if they've left Fort Leavenworth or Fort Riley, and to be able to expand services where a greater number of our veterans may live. Let me go back to our emergency department to urgent care center. That is one initiative that we've looked at based upon the workload. This is a decision that is above me. I make a recommendation up to my boss, the vision director, and then final signature is up to central office in Washington, D.C. And so my plan is we've looked at a lot of data. Just last week, before actually I went on a vacation, my group that has looked at these data points provided me some additional data that they were able to find within the community, as we provide a lot of community care, about what impact that this would be if we were changed to if we changed from an emergency department to urgent care. And so our team is still reviewing that. We have not submitted anything forward yet to my visiting director or my boss for approval. Depending upon that decision, we may submit that forward, or we may say no, and we're going to continue to go as a status quo of having an emergency department. If we went to an urgent care center, that would be fewer number of hours, but still we would provide services at the VA and within the community. I'll take some questions at the end. The last slide that I have is we're expanding care. So we're expanding oncology care in Topeka. We are hiring, or recruiting for, I should say, a hematologist. We already have an oncologist on staff. We're recruiting for a hematologist, so we're expanding care. We'll have additional space. Ophthalmology and cataract services, both in Topeka and Leavenworth. We have not done cataract surgery here in Topeka for a number of years, but we do have an ophthalmologist on staff now, so we're excited to be able to provide that service within the VA, within Topeka, as well as Leavenworth. Orthopedic care, we have an orthopedic surgeon at Leavenworth. We are going to be standing up a new PET CT scanner in Topeka, hopefully by October, November. We've used the community services for that, but we also feel that that's needed as we expand oncology care. And so that will be a great new service for us. We're looking at whole health opportunities. We have a new whole health service that has stood up that is looking at mindfulness, acupuncture, pain management, a lot of different other opportunities, both for our veterans, but also our employees too. Dermatology, we're recruiting for a dermatologist. They are difficult to come by, and so we're hoping that we will get some individuals who may be interested, but we do that also through telehealth with Columbia VA Medical Center or Kansas City VA at this point. We are doing some construction with our new community living center, additional 15 beds in one of our building 6 we call it. We currently have 29 beds there, so we'll add another 15 beds probably within the next year to building 6 is where all of our community living center beds are. And today actually we had a ribbon cutting ceremony for our new GI suite next to our surgery, so we can do colonoscopies, EGDs, and that's a great benefit to have that actually here. We have provided that here, but it's a new GI suite. So we have a lot of things going on in Eastern Kansas, and as you see, it's quite expansive as we serve our veterans. We take care of over 40,000 veterans at least one time each year. It could be, and it oftentimes is more than that. But that's my presentation tonight. Well, last thing is the price of freedom is visible in our campus every single day. And it is a great honor to be able to take care of our veterans and realize that they are willing to give up all for our freedoms. And I'm grateful to be able to serve. So if there are a few minutes for questions, I'm open up to answer those, or I'll answer them at another time.
Councilwoman Nager, I see that you have your hand up, but I also wanted to acknowledge that somebody had tried asking a question and was asked to wait till the presentation was over in the council chamber. Since I was not able to see that, who tried to ask a question? Spencer. Councilman Duncan. Hello?
What's up? Who, me?
Yeah, she called.
Well, I have questions, but I didn't try during the discussion, so if Councilwoman Nager was called upon, I'll
All right.
let her go first and then.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councilman Duncan. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was very helpful and informative. As a dentist that gets contracted a lot of VA patients, I am very appreciative of the opportunity to serve those who have served our country in that way. And so it's been a pleasure to work with the VA in the past while I've been practicing here in Topeka. I did have a question about, as far as COVID-19 vaccines, are you seeing that you are able to vaccinate the veteran population of Northeast Kansas and your staff at a pretty comparable rate to what we're seeing in Shawnee County? Are you seeing more? Are you seeing less? Is that something that you can talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have actually vaccinated over 85% of our staff. And the last numbers I looked at were close to, let me see if I can remember this, 32,000. That's with our employees as well as within veterans and family members of veterans. We could, until Congress gave us the authority to take care of spouses of veterans as well as those children younger than 18, we could not do that. But we did get authority, so we've over 32,000, and we have plenty of vaccine to be able to do more, and we are still getting a lot of walk-ins on occasion to be able to provide the vaccine.
Is that something that would be available to community members who are not veterans, or are there stipulations to getting your vaccine at the VA?
Correct. There are stipulations. Again, we can do veterans, spouses of veterans, and family members of veterans and or caregivers. We actually did give to Topeka, the public health department, let me see how many, 3,000 doses that we had, Pfizer doses. We actually had that partnership so that we could actually give to the public health department here in Topeka, Shawnee County. And so they've been using them, and we still have more. We've told them that if they need more, we can definitely give them some more.
Awesome. That's really all the questions I had for right now. Thank you so much, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to credit Councilman Duncan. If memory serves me right, Councilman Duncan was the one that asked for this presentation to be provided. So Councilman Duncan, thank you so much. And I'm certain that you do have questions as well, if you would like to ask your questions.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you for being here this evening. Very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
So what is your timeline on the decision for whether you transition this VA or not?
Well, to be able to make my decision will be within the next 30 to 60 days, based upon what's been provided to me. And then it'll go to again, the vision director, Dr. Patterson, and up to central office. That can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. There are other facilities across the nation that just have urgent care centers. So there is some history to that, but I can't tell you exact time frame for that. I would not anticipate that if a change were to be made, would happen before early part of next calendar year, because there are other things that we have to consider about if behavioral health patients come after hours, and how do we work that and that's still being discussed.
So what happens during that process in terms of preparing the community for those changes, both the vets that use it? I mean, what does that look like then in that interim?
So we have a communication plan. We would communicate with our media outlets. We have town hall meetings. We have a distribution email that goes out to 22,000 veterans. We have texting that a lot of veterans have as well that we can actually send communication messages out to.
So then, are you already in communication with our hospitals about what this change would mean for them?
Yes, absolutely.
And they're ready? They've told you, great, we're ready? I mean, here's my concern. I think, what happens to these individuals when they need emergency care moving forward? And how do you as a VA system guarantee that this community has resources to take that over? And then what are the checks on that once it happens to ensure that that's actually happening once we've made that shift to other facilities? So
Dr. Carnegie and I have talked on a number of occasions. I sit on a board with him and several other rural critical access hospitals, so they are fully aware where we're thinking about this in strategic action. Mr. Anderson at St. Francis, we've had discussions as well. We actually, I'll give you some of the numbers. There's an average of 2 to 3 patients that come to our ED from 8 o'clock till 8 o'clock at night till 8 in the morning. That's the average. Sometimes a little higher, sometimes it's 0. And so it's not a tremendous amount, but it is one. Absolutely, is one veteran. And if you multiply that times 365, it's a number. So we actually have we have quarterly meetings with Stormont Vale as well as with St. Francis to talk through issues, not just of this, but just of care, because we have a lot of veterans that already receive care at both of those hospitals that we pay for, that we send, that we can't take care of. One great thing that started in Topeka and Leavenworth over the past 4 weeks is we have a telestroke program. We were having difficulties being able to recruit, as you can well imagine, to do stroke services, but now we work with VA providers across the nation. I'm trying to remember where, but we're telestroke, so we have those providers available. We can get the veteran in, get them medication, and ship them over to St. Francis or to Stormont Vale very quickly. We haven't had that availability beforehand, so we've had great collaboration, and we're going to continue to have that one.
So is there anything that those hospitals have to show you or any standards they have to meet before you make a recommendation, or do you make the recommendation based on your data with the hopes that then something will get worked out with those hospitals?
Yeah, I do not need to have anything signed or that I would submit forward. I would write that up that I've been in communication with them, and we have these relationships already.
Okay, so at that point, once that change is made, we're up the, and I understand, but we're at the mercy of those, and we have great hospitals, so my questions are not of concern of the level of care or the people in charge of those hospitals. My concern is what happens when one organization, the VA, who's taking care of these vets, switches their mode. We then rely on other organizations to pick up that care, and if there comes a point where they decide we just aren't in a position to do this anymore, if the VA is then ready to step in and ensure that that care is happening one way or the other, whether it's through the VA system or through the hospitals. I mean, what I don't want to see is a lapse of care because this transition is made and not everything has been worked out, or there's not commitments from other hospitals to take up those services.
I have a great relationship with these administrators, and we have continual discussions with them. So, and I'll continue to build that relationship and the collaboration. So, based upon those numbers, I don't think, and I'll ask them specifically if that will be an issue, but they've been able to take care of our veterans when veterans have shown up at their doors, and then we would pay for services based upon other laws that allows for that to occur, or if we receive an ambulance into our emergency department and need to transfer them there, then we pick up the phone and there is a hard handoff from physician to physician or nurse to nurse to be able to provide that care.
Okay. And I appreciate all that, and I will talk to our hospitals. I would, of course, think it's best for everyone to have something a little more concrete than good relationships, because as I always say, and they hear me say all the time, you may not be here tomorrow, and so I got to make sure that the next guy or girl is ready to step in and also make that commitment. So thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Councilmember Hiller, I don't know if the mayor can see you.
I think she can see me, but she's muted, so she's trying to talk. Good to see you.
You too, thank you.
Since you're here, and I appreciate the update, I don't know, it's been a long time, I think. And so I have 3 questions. One, our hospital has been renowned for its psychiatric services. Could you talk for a moment? It sounds like there's winds of shifting and change about where we sit in the network for psych services and whether there are any changes anticipated in that.
So we still are a center of excellence across our vision, our region, for behavioral health services. I did see Wichita, they're opening up a substance abuse program down there. That's great for our veterans. So, but we're still the center of excellence. We have a construction project probably within 2 to 3 years for a brand new building where our behavioral health services are, to be able to get into a new building and also expand some services. Right now, we've had some challenges in recruiting some psychiatrists. And so we actually are the mental health hub, telehealth hub. So we take care of veterans here in Eastern Kansas, but also in Missouri, down in Wichita, with those providers at our telehealth hub. And so we're going to continue to focus and make sure that we have those services available.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good.
Absolutely.
Second question would be, you mentioned domiciliary capacity at Leavenworth. And at one point, there was some discussion of adding some capacity here. I think it's about time you came. Do we have any domiciliary capacity right now
Here in Topeka?
Yes.
We do not.
Okay.
And we have not looked at that within our strategic plan at this point in time, but it definitely can be put on the table. I think when I first came, there was some discussion regarding enhanced use lease and building a new building for that purpose.
Correct.
It's been a number of years since.
Right.
Yep.
And so I was remembering that when you talked about it, because I didn't think we had it then, though we did have some residential. So my last question actually goes back to that proposal that was kind of going all over the country at that time, which was to use a lot of the VA hospitals had big campuses, including ours, and there was the idea to sell off or otherwise develop some of that. Is there anything in this motion that you're
Not
going through right now?
No, not right now. We have our big enhanced use lease is over in Leavenworth, and there are a number of housing units available that have been renovated for veterans to live in, and that's another transition from domiciliary to their own. They could go there, but that is a private, but it's nothing that we have on the books for here.
That's fine. It was just a question.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Mayor. Deputy Mayor.
Somebody.
Nobody.
Other questions?
I don't see any other questions, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Awesome tag team. It's what is needed when you're working from home. All right, if there are no other questions, Rudy, thank you for your presentation. And we really appreciate having excellent care for our veterans right here in our backyard. So thank you for the work that all of your professionals do in the hospital. We are very grateful to have you guys here.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll make it a point to make sure we come back a little sooner, so give you more updates as we continue to expand services and if there are changes to let you know. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
We move on to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
A is our minutes of the regular meeting of July 6, 2021, and there are no applications.
What is the pleasure of the body?
Move approval.
We have a motion for approval by Mr. Emerson. Do we have a second? Councilwoman Nager seconds. Comments or questions with regards to the consent agenda? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
Mayor Daley Isla,
Yes.
Council Members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Lesser.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
With that, we move on to the action items. Action item A, if the clerk would read.
A is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout notifying the county clerk of, 1, the governing body's proposed intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate for the 2022 budget, 2, the proposed tax rate, and 3, the date, time, and location of a public hearing to consider adopting a budget that exceeds the revenue neutral rate.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight, we begin a process that we've talked about a number of times about how we move forward with approving our budget as it relates to the changes that occurred with Senate Bill 13 and House Bill 2104. So Senate Bill 13 requires what we have in the agenda tonight, which is a consideration of a resolution that states our interest at considering and conducting a hearing for the possibility of exceeding revenue neutral rate. The new law states that the city would have to take an affirmative action to actually exceed what is considered the revenue neutral rate, which means we would only be able to capture the same amount of tax dollars that we currently have to operate with this year as far as our ad valorem tax or property tax. So tonight, the resolution states 3 things. The first item being that we are requesting a consideration of a mill levy rate of 39.687 for our mill levy rate. That is our current mill levy rate. So that would mean that we would be able to capture any valuation increase that occurred on a person's property in the last year. Also, it would set a date of September 7th, 2021 at 6 p.m. to conduct a meeting and a hearing related to the decision as to whether we would actually exceed the revenue neutral rate. And the last item that it does is directs the city clerk to send a certified copy of this resolution to the county clerk on or before July 20th, 2021. We've talked a lot about what this does, and I just want to stress that it is important to remember that this is only to allow us to consider the possibility of exceeding revenue neutral. It does not cause us to exceed revenue neutral in this decision. That decision will come at our hearing on September 7th. And I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Mr. City Manager.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Dobler.
City Manager, so we're talking about general fund. What departments make up the bulk of the general fund?
Our two largest departments are police and fire department, and then we have a number of others, and it also covers our municipal court, our finance, HR, legal, executive department, planning, so those departments. Other than utilities and parking, this is what covers it.
Okay. For the two largest departments, police and fire, do you anticipate raises in 2022?
Yes, we're currently negotiating for those raises, and we have put money into this budget that's proposed in order to be able to accomplish the giving of raises for those departments.
So really the bottom line is if we want to adequately compensate our police and fire departments, we need to look at being able to take advantage of the valuation increase. One more question, if I could. What is the overall average valuation increase in Shawnee County?
The information that Steve shared with me is we're looking at about a 4.5% to 4.6% average valuation increase.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that accurate, Steve? Is that still the number? Yeah, that's still the number, 4.5% to 4.6%, right in that neighborhood.
Great. Thank you.
Other questions for the city manager?
Councilwoman Heller.
Councilwoman Heller.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify for others, perhaps, what you're proposing by the number that you've cited in that is that we would actually, in the past, typically our goal has been to not raise taxes, to keep the mill levy the same. And so what we're doing is not only the technical stuff that we need to do for the state, but by naming that number, we are confirming right now that we would not raise the mill levy.
Yes, that is our request. It would not be able to go higher than this because it would be an increase in the mill levy rate. This is the exact mill levy rate that we currently have for the year 2021.
Thank you. Just wanted it to be clear.
And for the record, city manager, if you could just illuminate the public, even though we talk about this often, how long has this been our mill levy?
This would be the 9th year we had the same mill levy rate.
Okay, so for the record, again, for 9 years, the city of Topeka has not increased the mill levy in our community. Other questions? Councilwoman Heller.
Move to approve.
Second? Councilman Emerson?
No, I second. I don't know if you already had a second or not.
No, I was asking for a second. Councilman Emerson, second. Thank you for being voluntold. If there's no other questions in regards to this item, we would proceed to vote.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
and Mayor Daley Isla.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
We now move on to item B, if the clerk would read.
B is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout in accordance with Section 1860-010 of the Topeka Municipal Code, approving a conditional use permit to allow operation of an indoor golf simulation entertainment venue, indoor recreation type 2, and associated indoor recreation on property zone C2 Commercial District at 2841 Southeast Croco Road in the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas.
City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll ask Director Finder to come forward and get his presentation up. This is for approval of a conditional use permit. Interesting project, and I'll let him explain it.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good evening, governing body. Yes, 8 iron therapy, something we all need. A nice proposal that came before us, the Planning Commission, for it's about a 4,000 square foot tenant space in the shopping center at Southeast 29th and Croco. As you heard, it's an indoor golf simulation. There's some pitching and batting bays. There's a bar. But the main reason this is before you is the indoor recreation part of that. In C2, you have, it's considered our neighborhood commercial or neighborhood zoning. So this certainly doesn't have any impact on nearby residential, which is why we do have this in our zoning code for a CUP. So that's really why it's before you. There were no issues staff or the neighbors brought to the attention of this project. So we do recommend approval and stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Fyander?
Move approval.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second? Councilwoman Nager seconds. Additional discussion. Councilwoman Ortiz thirds. Seeing no additional discussion, we proceed with the vote.
Council members Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla.
Yes.
And Councilmember Hiller.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Right, we move on to
Mayor?
item. Yes, sir.
Mayor, I'm sorry, but are the Vanderpools by any chance? Is that, okay. This is in my district. Sorry, Mayor, if I could just a point of privilege real quick.
Absolutely, please, by all means.
You guys are in my district, and I love this idea. And I know it's been a long journey with the conditional use permit. I appreciate you guys taking it out. And me and my family are anxious to come in and partake of all your things, especially the beer. So, thanks. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for choosing your community to do this project. Okay, we move on to item C, if the clerk would read.
B is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout in accordance with Section 1860010 of the Topeka Municipal Code. Sorry. Switch here. C is acceptance of a land dedication in the final plat for Horseshoe Bend Subdivision Number 6, the 6th of 7 phases of the Horseshoe Bend development located north of Southeast 45th Street, east of Southwest Topeka Boulevard, and south of the Kansas Turnpike.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll actually make these comments for both this item and the next one. As you look at it, they're both the creations of new subdivisions, which is always exciting for our community. We know the issues that we're having with finding housing and developing housing, so creating additional lots that can be built upon and create new homes for residents here in Topeka is exciting. And so I'll have Bill go through the first one, Plat 6, Subdivision 6.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. If it's okay, I'll do the same. These two proposals go together, and we can wrap and summarize that here in short order. Good news, this is the final phases for the Horseshoe Bend subdivision that started back in 2000. This will add another 59 lots to our inventory for single-family development. And there really, again, this has been in the works for quite some time. There really are no issues. They've taken care of everything that has had to be taken care of through previous phases. So this is just a cherry on the top, so to speak. As you know, you're just accepting dedications and easements tonight. The plat has been approved by the Planning Commission for both. So I'll stand for any questions at this point.
Questions for Mr. Fyander? Councilwoman Hiller?
Not a question really, but if I recall correctly, some of us have been invited to visit down there in the past by neighbors who were weary of waiting, if you want to put it that way. So I think it's really exciting that they're ready to go. It's great for the developers, great for the neighborhood, and certainly great for Topeka. So Glad it's true. Thank you. That's it, Mayor.
Wonderful. Legal, do we have to do disclosures here?
No, you don't. You just make a motion to accept the dedications.
Wonderful, just making sure. So if there's no further questions, do we have a motion?
You want to, Mike, it's in your district.
Move to approve.
Deputy Mayor makes a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Emerson. If there's no, oh, we do have two individuals signed up for comment. They're Mr. Laubach and Mr. Austin via Zoom. Mr. Laubach, if you have anything that you would like to add to the conversation?
No, nothing to add, just here for any questions. And Brian was listed, but I originally wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make the meeting. But so that's why both of us were listed, but here for any questions. So thank you.
All right. No public comment on this item. If there's no additional comments, we proceed by voting.
Council members Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager. Yes. Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
and Valdivia Acla.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Wonderful. We have the second part of this motion, of this item. Item D, if the clerk would read.
D is acceptance of land dedications in the final plat for Horseshoe Bend subdivision number 7. The final phase of the Horseshoe Bend development located north of Southeast 45th Street, east of Southwest Topeka Boulevard, and along the south side of the Kansas Turnpike.
As staff indicated previously, the comments that were made for the prior item are the same discussions that are being presented for this one. The two individuals signed up to speak for public comment are Mr. Laubach and Mr. Austin, who are just here to answer any questions. Are there any questions with this item, which is identical to the item that we had heard before? And if there's not, what is the pleasure of the body?
Mayor, move approval.
We have a motion for approval by Councilman Emerson.
Second.
Second by the Deputy Mayor. Additional comments or questions before we proceed by voting? We proceed with the vote.
Council members Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acla,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Wonderful. At this point in time, we're moving on to the non-action item. If the clerk would read.
A is discussion regarding the 2022 City of Topeka operating budget.
And we move on to the Wade and Finance Team show. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight, we want to continue to go through a few of the departments. So tonight, we will be planning to cover planning, HR, legal, and finance. And so we will move to those slides in order to be able to continue our discussion regarding each of the departments as we go through the budget process. So the first one is planning, and get that up, and then we can have Director Finder come forward and provide his comment.
If you could turn to page 25 in your handouts from Saturday.
Thank you, Steve.
Good to go? I think so, everybody's- Thank you again, once again, governing body, have me back. This time to talk a little budget. I'll just walk through the two slides we have here and hit the highlights for our changes for 2022. But the overall view, the lion's share, a big lion's share of our overall department is now made up of grants. We have about 11 million overall in the department, of which only 24% is general fund. Most of those are grants. And then most of those are coming through the Housing Services Division, which we absorbed from the Neighborhood Relations Department. So that's kind of the broad overview. as far as some of the highlights for changes to 2022, I'll start with the COVID-related HUD grants. We have been, in a good way, flooded with a number of HUD awards that have come in as a way of COVID. I think we are estimating another a carryover of about $3.6 million into the 2022 budget. That does, you haven't even seen, we still have another $2 million coming to this body eventually to amend into the common plan. So that gives you some idea. We should have some uncommitted funds going into next year. All told, this last year and the previous year, we've had about $5 million, just in round numbers, come in. We've got about $2 million that is left. And so we expect to draw that down a little bit more before the end of the year. And as I mentioned, there'll be another $2 million we're waiting for HUD direction on that will be targeted towards homeless prevention. The second change there we have up there, we were able to eliminate some of the temporary personnel expenses in development services. We are finally achieving our march towards an all-electronic application system. That includes contractor license renewals. So we used to hire some temporary staff to do that once a year for 3 or 4 months. And so that's a nice savings that have been realized or will be realized next year. And also, as a side note, I mean, as I indicated, we are, as of today, 100% electronic live with our application process, including payments, and that's a big thing. That means that it's not just calling up and giving us an electronic copy and we take the credit card over the phone. No, everybody, we are 100% virtual. You submit your applications for both planning and development services online and pay online through our Paymentus portal. So permit portal is, I'm glad to say, is 100% there now. So excited about that. The third bullet, talk about training in development services. You'll see an uptick in that line item for development services. That is to restore what was reduced last year in good faith. There are a number of required certifications for our inspectors and plan reviewers that per union contract we need to keep up with. So that's been added back. We've also have an accelerated schedule to bring you code updates. And to do that, we need additional training from the International Building Code folks. So that is reflected in the development services budget. And then the last thing there is just a simple transfer. The planning division did an increase in staff personnel, you'll see, but that was simply a transfer from development services to planning for the zoning inspector. So with that, those are kind of the highlights for the coming year, and I'll stand for any questions or comments I can help with.
Questions for Mr. Fayenda? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Fayenda.
Thank you.
City Manager?
Steve, we going next?
HR.
HR is next, and that's page 30 on the slide presentation.
Good evening, governing body. This evening, I'll just give some brief highlights. The human resources budget is largely a flat budget. We do have some reallocations of personnel to cost share between the general fund and the risk funds that they support. So we do have 100% to the workers' compensation fund to FTEs. And we also have a split of 1 full-time and 2 50% staff dedicated to the health fund. And that is for the positions of the benefits manager,
the benefits specialist, and the wellness program coordinator. Our budget remains about $1,260,000, which is just as close to flat as there's no significant changes in our expenses for the general fund allocation to our budget for 2022. Really, the only things that I wanted to make sure and highlight were the allocations and the split funding of the salaries of those 4 positions. But I would be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for Jackie? Seeing none, City Manager? Thank you so much, Ms. Russell.
Thank you.
And next we will go to legal, which is page 32. Mary?
Legal has 11 people working in the civil litigation. We have 4 in general government, and that's the division that essentially provides the legal advice to the various departments. There is the city attorney, and then myself, Mary Kuckelman, who took Catherine Walters' place, and then Bonnie Williams, who is our senior paralegal. Prosecution division has 3 attorneys, and civil litigation has 2 attorneys and 2 staff. Our budget hasn't changed at all since 2021. We were at $4 million. We've dropped to $3.9 million, so not many changes. The special liability fund is a fund sometimes you all are interested in, and that's what we use to pay any claims, pay attorney's fees for outside counsel, any kind of litigation-related expense. And that is always, we kind of estimate what our potential liability will be for the next year. It's always just an educated guess. And last year it was $2,897,000, and it's basically the same. We dropped down to $2,841,000. But that's essentially it in a nutshell. Not many changes. Do you have any questions of me?
Question for Mary.
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Ms. Feeney, thank you for presenting. I was told the reason for this, but honestly, it escapes me now. There was obviously there's a huge change from 2020 to the budget for 2021. Went from 1.6 million to a little over 4 million. And I think I was told, I mean, can you, I guess, well, so that I don't completely mess it up.
Why?
I can handle that.
Can you? Okay.
Yeah, so because of the fund, we budget the amount of the reserves in the fund in case they're needed to be used. We do not anticipate using them, but by state law, we have to budget for that. You have to approve those up front. And so what you see zeros because we haven't used them, a large number in 2021, followed by the same number in 2022. The anticipation then is that we hope not to use them this year, but then they would be available again in 2022.
So the less we pay out, the more we have in that fund available.
That's correct.
Fair? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
And I'll add, we still have a few cases that could potentially have settlements to them or judgments on them as we enter into the next year. We had one last year. Luckily, we did win with Jayhawk Racing. We had allocated funding in last year's in order to be able to protect ourselves should there have been a decision against us. In that case, we would have had a substantial payment to make. And so we're lucky there. We were able to get a good, we were able to get a good decision as it relates to that, very reasonable decision. And so therefore, but we do know of a few other cases, and that's why we keep those funds available in case we need to get a judgment or a settlement against those.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Can we clarify which line item we're talking about? Because there's the special, are we talking about the special liability fund? Or are we talking about, because my other question was, what is this other payments fund of 1.57 million that wasn't actual at all in Are those two different funds? On the first one, allocation by expense category, other payments, 1.57 million. Then allocation by fund, special liability fund, 2.89. So
That's
You have-
the revenue.
Sorry.
That's the revenue, right?
Yeah, you have
payments.
one that is for civil claims. And there's your 1.5.
So one's for, okay, so are these separate funds or is there crossover in these dollars?
They are separate funds.
So what is other payments for? What is
I'm not
1.57
sure.
million
I'd
of
have to-
other payments?
I don't remember
Because we didn't
specifically.
spend anything in 19 or 20.
And that's the reserve fund balance that's carrying across.
Okay, I thought that was the special liability fund. I guess that's why I'm confused.
Let me get you a good solid answer on that.
Because I mean, that's substantial
Yeah.
amount of
Yeah,
money.
let me get you a good solid answer on that.
Okay. And then my second question would just be, at some point, could we just get a breakdown of what we've spent on outside counsel up this year?
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions for legal? Seeing none, city manager?
Thank you. Our next department is finance. Steve?
Finance is similar to the last two departments. There's not much that has changed year over year. The one thing I would note for finance is the OpenGov budgeting software,
Page 8.
which went into place
Page 2.
this year. This is on page 29. Other than that, there's really no changes over the last couple of years. As you can see, the majority of the expenses in finance are in personnel.
Questions for Mr. Wade? Seeing none, city manager?
Tonight, Mayor, that's all we have. We still have municipal court and a couple other areas that we'll cover in the near future. But at this time, that's it for tonight's presentations.
We do have Mr. Ledbetter, if
Councilwoman
looking
Valdivia Alcala has a question, Mayor. Sorry.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a question for, I guess, either Steve or city manager, because I'm not clear on this. We have this American Rescue Plan money of like 43.5 million or whatever. And I think it has to be spent up, the date where everything has to be spent is December of 2024. So my question is, all of this money, how will this impact the budget that we're looking at for next year? I mean,
Eventually, you will get a list, the governing body will, of those things that we're looking to propose, those things that could be done, and the governing body will make a decision as to how that funding would go. There are only a few items that are in the current operating budget that you're looking at now that could potentially be funded by American Rescue Plan. So there isn't going to be a lot of effect as far as reducing how much would come out of the general fund to be covered by American Rescue Plan dollars. Most of what we're looking at is other additional projects or types of monies that we would need to do. Depending on when they get expended, we may need to make amendments to this year's budget and then next year's budget. But rather than incorporate an unknown into this budget, we need to have a bigger discussion as to how that money will be utilized, and then we'll make the appropriate adjustments. Because what we're talking about is we have this set of money set aside, invested. We have little over 22 million that is sitting in a bank invested for us right now. And then eventually we will make decisions on how we want to utilize that money within the community. We have until 2024 to encumber the money, and we have until December of 2026 to actually expend it. So we have a lot of time. We don't need to rush, and so we've been studying and analyzing. I have a good idea as to what I'm looking at. I'm going to be running it by staff here in the next week, and so then they'll get their input, and then looking to begin to get your input in the month of August, present those in one-on-one, and then eventually bring back to the group set of recommendations.
I've been reading a number of different articles from different cities about what they're using the American Rescue Plan funds for. And I am requesting, even though I know that this is something long-term, you said, by 2026 it has to be encumbered.
Right.
I think it would be beneficial for someone to make a presentation to us, pretty basic, about the American Rescue Plan itself, so that the public can see it and have some base understanding of how these funds, or what this all entails, a basic explanation and how the funds may be used. So with my requesting that, how long could it be before we would end up seeing some type of presentation in this public setting?
That's something that I can prepare in the week, basically based on the basic knowledge that I have, things that I've sit in, multiple webinars that I've been involved in, and handouts that I have. I can provide that. We'll just look at the calendar to make sure we're not overburdening time-wise a particular meeting, and we'll find a meeting that works, and we'll look at that tomorrow when we have our agenda review planning.
Okay, because I know that in the Public Health and Safety meeting, when we were talking about digital navigator and broadband accessibility, there was quite a few things that sounded like you were running into, monies could not be spent in this particular capacity. So I think that, whatever it can't be spent on would be good for the public to understand as well as me.
Yep.
So,
Will do.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Ortiz, to be followed by Councilman Duncan.
Oh, I just wanted to know how many people are in finance?
How many people are in finance?
23.
So 22, 23 when we're fully staffed.
How many are we short?
Just one right now.
Just one?
Yes, ma'am.
So we have 23?
22 currently, yes, ma'am.
23 assigned.
Thank you.
Councilman Duncan.
I just have a procedural question, I guess, moving forward a little bit on the budget. So I know that the next meeting we'll get it'll be a non-action item. Is it going to be a standing non-action item? And do we plan, and I understand that the public can come in at any time, whether it's public comment or whether it's during that time and make public comment, but I know last year, I think previous years, we sort of dedicated one time that we called it a budget hearing for the public in case they wanted to all come at that moment and talk to us. And I didn't know if we were still planning to do that or if it's appropriate to look at that during the September 7th and put those together, or if we were going to do anything like that for this year. So.
We will continue to move it forward as a non-action item until September 7th.
Okay.
September 7th is when we'll have the revenue neutral hearing and then also have the hearing on the budget. And so that's the plan right now. So we will have all the rest of the meetings until then that we'll dedicate to answering questions and providing information. And especially, probably the last presentations will be made at the meeting on the 27th. And then after that, it will be simply trying to answer questions, providing responses back, having a review of any of those responses that staff's provided, debate about anything that maybe wants to be moved or changed or modified within the budget, discussing the impacts of that. And that's really what we hope to accomplish through the month of August, is trying to nail those down and remembering we only have 2 meetings in August.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have Mr. Ledbetter signed up for public comment. Councilwoman Hiller.
Yeah.
Forgive me, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 things to follow up on Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala. I too have been reading some of those articles that have been coming through, and it's been interesting to me to hear from counties and cities around the country, just encouraging cities to really look at how those dollars can be used within their budgets to certainly not to do something that then requires future maintenance, that requires dollars from the budget, but conversely to look at how those dollars could be invested within what's in the budget at the time in order to reduce future costs and obligations. And you know, I take that seriously, but it's been interesting to see how that's quite a thread And second, she mentioned broadband, and I saw a Facebook post today. Do we have news about broadband today?
It's in my announcements, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
You saw it on Facebook?
I did.
Teaser.
I think so. All right, well, we have to wait, but there's news on broadband. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the governing body knows that there are 4 main priorities for those funds. Priorities include eliminating in communities lead pipes, making sure that those are gone. The other one is eliminating learning loss, broadband, as has been mentioned, and reducing crime in communities. One of the things that the U.S. Conference of Mayors have been debating with the federal government is the use of being able to recover some of the enterprise fund losses that we've had, because as you guys can imagine, one of the things that communities across the country are facing is we all have parking garages, right? And we have other enterprise funds in which we were not able to recoup some of those dollars. And at this time, as far as I recall, and city manager, correct me if I'm wrong, we are still not able to utilize to capture those losses. Is that still the case?
Yes, that is still the case. Enterprise funds are not be able to set aside specifically to cover revenue loss.
So, so we are still advocating, and we're still having regular meetings through the U.S. Conference of Mayors, making sure that we are pushing forward some of the concerns that we have. But yes, Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala, that is a great request for all of us to be able to just have a deeper discussion as a body of everything that we can use the funds for. If there are no other questions, I do want to call Mr. Ledbetter to come and speak. Mr. Ledbetter? Oh, there he is.
Thank you, governing body. You should all have received emails from me about these budget items and some of the concerns I have, not only about budgets, but even the structure of some of the meetings and the lack of oversight of contracts that we now have by the governing body. But the first thing I want to make sure that I've said on the record is I definitely want to fully fund our police department. I said that last year. There was a move afoot last year to cut budgets nationwide in various cities. I think the ones that did that, it's been a disaster, and crime has escalated. So we have a great police department. It's well admired by most of the public in this city, and so I definitely want to put that on the record. I think it's time we have a CPA as Director of Finance, and to act also as a comptroller for our $300 million that pass through our hands every year. I'm constantly amazed at how well the CPA does across the aisle, across the parking lot with the county, and how quickly I can get information from her about any type of budget request. I remember I requested all of last year's contracts, and she gave it to me in 48 hours. Not the contracts per se. I said, do not give me a document dump. That's a legal term. But I said, I want a caption of what you did. And it was about $40 million that those county commissioners approved, going all the way from $1,000 on up to hundreds of thousands. I would like to see a very firm lid put on revenue bond borrowing. And I'd like to see it immediately. I don't want any more borrowing of revenue bonds above the $271 million that we're already at. And I think that we just have not done a good job of overseeing those kinds of debts as a body up here, and making sure that all of that is clear what we're doing with the money. And then we wind up with, I'm told, as much as $100 million in various accounts where the money hasn't been used. I would like to see a reorganization where utilities is put under Public Works. I think they're struggling over there to get the water lines replaced that they've said to this council they're going to do in the CIPs, $6.5 million a year. They're nowhere near that level. and it's consistent. And I'm not blaming any person over there. I'm saying that I think they need that oversight of public works that they used to have. Public works involved in a lot of construction projects, and I think that would lend expertise. I did send a proposed cut to planning and development. You can read that yourself. I'm getting short on time here. That's to make that Department of Planning and Development much more efficient, remove a middle level of management that I think is unnecessary for such a small department, and put the director closer to the workers, and vice versa, the workers to the director. Remove that middle barrier, as I see it, of a couple of positions. Lastly, on this COVID money, I would suggest putting a lot of that money into our distribution system of water lines that consistently break. We're at 5 times the national level in those pipes that have consistently broken, and that costs us a lot of extra money and probably overtime. And I got it all
Mr.
done.
Ledbetter,
Yes.
okay, you're done, because I was going to ask if you needed additional time.
And thank you. I appreciate it, but no.
All right. Okay, if there's no further discussion, we will continue discussing the budget in our next meeting. Thank you for the staff for all your hard work. At this point in time, we move on to the public comment. We have 3 individuals who have signed up to speak this evening. First one is Mr. Ledbetter.
Moving rapidly.
You should have stayed standing, Joe.
Yeah, I guess. I have a little piece of this. Yes. I don't. No, I'm kidding. What I want to talk about is something I talked about last week, oversight of our contracts. I'm going to continue to talk about this. I've talked to a number of people in this community to give any person unlimited authority without the council approval to sign contracts. I'm sorry, I can't find any other city in Kansas that even does that. And so, because I'm from Kansas and I'm not from California where maybe they do that, I'm focused on Kansas, okay? I would not want to be in that position myself, where I was signing contracts without council approval, especially very large ones. I would want the input of the council. I'd want that CYA. I'd want that thing to be vetted by a number of minds. You know, there's a proverb in the Bible that says, if you make war, have many counselors, okay? When you're doing these vast contracts like we're doing in this city, 71 million last year, and I think it was 78 million the year before, and not having the council directly involved in that oversight, especially on the ones 50,000 and up, I just shudder to think of the mistakes that can happen in those kinds of environments. And just because it's been on the books since 2005, by the way, the former city attorney was incorrect the other day in a committee meeting. She thought it was 98. Since we did this change of government in 2005, I remember seeing that, and I saw that clause before I went to law school, and I thought that would possibly not be a good idea. But I was so excited to get a manager form of government after having been trained in that program at KU, which is top in the country. I mean, I'm not bragging, it's the truth. It's out of 300 schools. They really train people to run cities and departments of government well. And I guess I just kind of, thought, well, everybody's going to be trained that way, but they're not. And I'm not slighting anybody, but I'm just telling you my own concerns. I need to see a lot more involvement of this council in our contracts, in our projects, our street projects. I need to see a lot more involvement before I'm comfortable of the council being involved in overseeing utilities, which kind of, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but they kind of operate as kind of a separate little island out there. And we're not even bringing the infrastructure projects into the infrastructure committee. And they have a lot of infrastructure that needs done. So to me, you want to have this oversight of this body. Now, we do that at the MTA. I realize it's a much smaller budget, but we're very aggressive in our questioning about contracts. We're very aggressive in asking about consulting if we need to do that and why. And we get direct answers from staff because some of us are just kind of that persona. We expect direct answers and we get them. We actually oversee all kinds of, not just contracts, but routing problems. And we went through all kinds of problems with COVID and how that affected bus operations. But we came through. And I'll tell you, our board was very active in some of those solutions. It did not just come from staff, how to solve some of the problems we were facing. And I would just hope that in the future, I see a lot more oversight of this body over our contracts and over our projects that's going on. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. The next person signed up to speak is Mr. Chance Lemmer.
Mayor, City Manager, and council members, thank you for your time. My name is Chance Lammer. I am a citizen speaking in support of the Topeka Police Department's officers and support of the Fraternal Order of Police in regards to their contract negotiations. It is no secret that departments across the country are in distress for many reasons. There is a nationwide crisis with many departments experiencing manpower shortages. Topeka is no exception to this. Many departments are seeing officers retire, transfer to other departments, or find new careers due to the work conditions and stress that these shortages cause. Many departments, including the TPD, are already experiencing staff shortages. The Topeka Police Department is nearly down 30 officers. That's almost an entire patrol shift. The patrol officers are frequently working at a minimum manpower level, and dispatch has calls holding at almost any given time of the day. What will happen when there is an emergency with your family and a police officer isn't available to respond? This is already happening in Topeka. Any units available to clear and respond. The exodus of officers is further complicated by the fact that being a police officer isn't as much of a desirable job in today's political climate. The job is not only dangerous, but officers are grossly underpaid, couple that with many other factors. And we can all understand why it's harder and harder to fill officer positions with the most desirable candidates. The recruits are just not there. I remember when, I gotta rephrase something. If Topeka is going to be held to a standard to recruit good officers, it is important to compensate the officers with pay that is competitive with departments across the nation. At one time, TPD was one of the top departments to work for in Kansas and in surrounding states. The pay, benefits, and morale was top-notch. Now other departments are outshining the Topeka Police Department, and we're losing officers at an alarming rate. As the capital city, Topeka should be a leader instead of falling towards the bottom compared to other cities. Ask yourself, is this the way we should be treating those that are here to protect and serve the citizens of our great city? I'm asking you to look at the big picture here. Our crime rate is deplorable. It's harder and harder to attract new businesses and increase the city's population with crime across the city as it is. I'm asking that you logically think about all of this and take the political thoughts out of the mix. We need a fully funded police department and officers that are paid what they're worth to see improvements in the crime rate across the city. Set your political agendas aside and do what is right. Fund the police department. And then also I'm I'm going to, what I read off here, I'm going to give that to each of the council people as well.
Thank you, Chance. Next person signed up to speak is Jacob Farr Keeler. Mr. Jacob Farr Keeler? He is not in attendance tonight? Okay, well, at this point, and I'm sorry? We move on to announcements, if the clerk would read.
There's no preliminary agenda for next week.
All right, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, as was mentioned earlier, we got good news. We have received a Kansas Health Foundation collaborative grant. We're the recipient of a $250,000 grant. That grant will help to create part-time technical and digital navigator positions to collect and share community-based resources and provide digital literacy training, equipment, and basic technical support for minorities and low to moderate income neighborhoods within our 31 neighborhoods. So we're excited. It's something that it was similar to and some of the ideas that we had when we looked at the Global Mayor's Challenge, and we weren't successful there, but we have been successful here. We're excited. It's going to give us a component that, as was mentioned earlier, that we do not have available to us with regards to the American Rescue Plan monies. The soft skills and soft effort here is a component that we wouldn't have been able to fund. So we're excited that this is going to happen. This is a good day for us and also many in the community once this program gets up and running. It was with a collaboration. Councilman Dobler was involved, Monique from our community engagement, 501 Schools. Gosh, I'm trying to think of all the others. Ozone, Grays, yes, it was involved in this very much so, giving us a lot of advice on how to move forward. So it was quite a collaboration, and we're super excited that this is happening. So good day. A couple other things I want to put out, some good things that our staff has been doing. TBD School Resources officers have been working on life skills and through a summer partnership with 501 Schools. I'm excited to see them stay involved, or with, actually that's with the Boys and Girls Club at their teen center. A lot of good interaction that's occurring with members of our community by our police officers. So that's good. Then also has been helping on, our law enforcement's been helping with Councilwoman Ortiz's daughter's free basketball camp. So that's been a good, at the middle school, Chase Middle School all week. So lots of involvement. I want to give some kudos to our forestry department. We had a really severe windstorm that came through. And I'll read the names: Eric Gustafson, Neil Burnell, Dustin Eakes, Dave Olgride, Shannon Keller, and Travis Chinbrink, who is the head of our forestry department, responded to over 80 requests for services from the storm on Saturday. They started at 2 a.m. in the morning and worked until 3:30 in the afternoon Saturday in order to clear the roads and get things. And then, of course, it didn't stop there. They've been at it all week already, trying to pick up those limbs that they cleared away from the roadway and take them out to be disposed of. So lots of work that they've been having to do. It was a difficult storm, but they got on it right away and got to work on it. So we're excited with how they behaved and want to give kudos to them. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. I wanted to publicly thank Chief Duke and the fire department last week. I did not feel too good, and they responded, as well as AMR. They were phenomenal and took care of me. If you haven't seen me around in the community, I am having some post-COVID complications, which is why Deputy Mayor was told that he was going to be running the meeting, and I apologize because I sent the team an email a little bit early saying, I'm going to push through this and I'm going to make the meeting. So I don't know how long I'll stay up here, but I'm happy that I made it through the whole meeting. Yay! So thank you for the amazing team that we have. And I'm very excited, City Manager and the team that put together that grant. We had an awesome group of people working on putting together that Mayor's Challenge. And it's wonderful to know that Councilman Dober was involved, Lazone was involved in this digital equity process, and that we're having something so positive happening in our community. So thank you to KHI for their trust in us, and we will do you right. So at this point, Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to say it was wonderful to see the Bill Persinger and his folks here, and this acknowledgement of the importance of BIPOC and mental health. I would want to just throw out there as well, when we're dealing with issues of Black youth or elders, Indigenous youth or elders, children, any one of that that would be included in this, we need to understand as well that there are cultural differences in treatment. And I just really believe that saying that is important, and that I do hope that the mental health services that we have here in Topeka reflect that, because it's not a one-size-fits-all for people of color. There are different traumas and issues that come into their lives, and what we really need to see as well is more therapists, social workers, psychiatrists of color trained in understanding up close and personal what some of those mental health struggles may be. Additionally, as a reminder, today marks the 70th anniversary of the Great Topeka Flood of 1951. I know probably Mike was already.
I caught you.
I was trying to get some eye contact there. But, you know, we are strong and resilient Topeka, and I think that even though that there was so much suffering at that time, that the infrastructure is in place, and I hope will continue to be in place to help anything from, you know, like that ever happening again as much as possible. Also reminding folks, the food sales for Fiesta Mexicana, which goes to support Holy Family Schools, start tomorrow, July 14th through July 17th, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. My understanding is there are no tamales from what I looked on the schedule. It will be taking place at the Marlo Cuevas Balandran Activity Center at 201 Northeast Atchison. You can go to the Fiesta Mexicana of Topeka Facebook page and look for updates. Also, because of the rain that we had Saturday, there was no Santa Fe mural dedication by Shawnee County Parks and Recreation. It has been rescheduled to July 31st at 10 a.m. Also Saturday, July 17th, there is the free yard waste disposal from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The address is 3431 Southeast 21st Street. I think it's run by Custom Tree Care, and their phone number is 478-9805. I just wanted to say a few words about the what was said last week during my announcement and the subsequent 2 articles that have been printed by the Topeka Capital Journal. I would say that folks in Oakland and myself are very grateful that a reporter took the time to show an interest in this and start drilling in to it. I want to remind folks that I saw that there was a lot of comments and I didn't read all of them, but I would actually encourage folks to actually read both articles, because I want to repeat, this is not a blanket statement on the homeless population. Again, this is not a blanket statement on the homeless population. This is a handful of individuals. Sometimes they are homeless, sometimes they are not. And I want to add additional information so that it can go on the record. One of the individuals that was, the name was not given, but was part of the discussions and concerns in Oakland, and to my understanding, through the Shawnee County Prosecutor's Office, the DA's decision or whatever, whoever tried that case, I'm not sure, I don't know all the process, but released this individual, and this individual is back into Oakland. I want you to know that that particular individual, over a several months period, had gone into the Dollar General store in Oakland over 100 times. That is 100 times, even after he was barred from going in there. He was verbally abusive, he was threatening, and he stole items. And the management was at a loss on how to handle this because when TPD was called, oftentimes TPD could not arrive in time. Many in Oakland believe overall, I think that there is a very high percentage of Oakland people that the increase in homeless, set aside these particularly problematic individuals, walking and camping in Oakland has increased. I don't have actual proof of this, but they believe that it's increased since the tent city was taken down. What I can say is that we do see more homeless. We also have issues with drug houses. So I think overall that has increased the level of petty theft and that basic level of insecurity that folks feel in Oakland. I saw that Barry Feeker made a comment in the article that he had reached out to me. That is true. Barry Feeker did reach out to me after the first article. And he told me that Topeka Police Department worked closely together with the Topeka Rescue Mission, and he wanted to know the names of the individuals. I did not feel comfortable giving those names, so right upon reading the article, I referred him to the chief so that him and chief could discuss this. I agree with Barry in that homeless have their rights under the law. I believe that they also have their civic liberties as well. Again, a problematic few that continue to get set free, then I would ask, what are the rights of the community? What are the rights of the children and the elders? Also, I want to let you know for full transparency that several weeks ago I had a meeting with the city manager, some of the City of Topeka prosecutors, et cetera, and we talked about these handful of individuals that were increasingly drawing concern within Oakland. Dialogue was had by the prosecutors, city manager, and myself, and the plan was to possibly be able to align with the Shawnee County prosecutors with dialogue that they had already had about these particular individuals, and the goal being that what could possibly be looked at, instead of looking at the dollar component with how many days we can keep these guys in jail and how much it's costing to keep them in jail, perhaps longer sentencing given their history of crimes and the number of them felonies, and also domestic assaults, and also increase bail, etc. And so one of the cases, the last case that went before through the DA's office, my understanding is that through the probation officer speaking on behalf of this individual is now in the street again. This individual has been arrested for numerous felonies, including number 9 felony, which is criminal threat. So I just want to say as well that after finding this out and we were back to square one, I'm still waiting for a response from the city manager as far as what was this meeting really all about? What are we really doing? And after hearing the DA talk last week about the SAVE program, this program to deal with the most violent offenders, I would ask the DA, what about these types of offenders that are not to that violent extreme, but that they continue to be set free? What about them? Do we wait until they get to be this? Maybe they will never become those most violent offenders. But what we do know is that we have a community that is a tax-paying, hardworking community that seems to, like it's stated in the article, have their hands up in despair as far as what are we going to do. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ortiz. Councilman Emerson.
Nothing, Mayor. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor.
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's nothing really pertaining to the city, but it's a very exciting development in my family. My sister is about to not be pregnant. She is expecting the birth of my parents' first grandchild held, and we're very excited to meet you, Marley. Just come on out. And I am hoping for safe travels for my parents and my little brother who are on their way to North Carolina now. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We'll be thinking of the new member of the family this evening. Councilman Dobler.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, it's good to be back in person. Appreciate all the thoughts and prayers. It's kind of a difficult couple of weeks, but it's been uphill since then. And it was really good to get texts from folks. And even though at some point I wasn't able to respond very quickly, certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple brief things this evening. First is, it's the third Thursday of the month, so you can come hang out with me again for 2 hours at Fairlawn Plaza from 5 to 7. For like an hour, I might have a special guest, my 7-year-old, who will probably tell you anything about me that I don't want you to know, so it might be a good time to come on down and see what you can pry out of the kid. But I will be there. The second thing is, my wife, for a long time, has given blood, and I have not. And so this Sunday, for the first time in my life, I will trek on over to the blood bank and give a donation. And I say that tonight not because I deserve on the pat on the back, but in fact, I probably deserve a good kick in the butt because I'm a perfectly healthy human being who probably should have been doing it long before I have finally been convinced it is time to do it. And for whatever reasons, I didn't do it previously, partly anxiety, although I don't have a fear of needles or anything to that end, and partly laziness. But we certainly, in this area, are at a crisis of very much, blood is very much needed. And so I'm going to go do it this Sunday. I will hopefully happily be able to report back it was no big deal and encourage other people to please don't be lazy like I have been these first 45 years. And if you can do it, please go do it. So thank you very much.
Councilman Lesser.
Nothing for me.
Councilwoman Heller.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to actually follow up on your comments in that usually it's Councilwoman Nager who's talking about COVID vaccines, but I'll do that this evening in that the word is that particularly with the Delta variant coming around and what people are learning from the experience with that is that A, even if people have had COVID, they should get the vaccine. And B, it appears that with there's beginning to be data that shows that the people who have had the vaccine are far more resistant to the Delta variant that's now coming around. And in fact, the latest thing that I saw was they are expecting that people who have been vaccinated, there will be no deaths. There may be some people that catch it. That's really, really major. Maybe somebody else can help with where somebody could look. What's also happening is the big vaccination centers have been shutting down. They've worked really hard and put out accommodated thousands and thousands of people. But what is happening in our community right now is that smaller places, scattered site in communities are signing up to be host sites to try and better connect with neighborhood people and the communities, maybe people that were nervous about going to those big centers or didn't have a way to get there. And so I just wanted to put that word out in general. Again, if there's somebody here who can say where the one-stop shop is that someone could check if they decided to take a reluctant family member or get going themselves, please speak up. Otherwise, that's where we're at right now. Councilman Dobler, do you know?
Yeah, I was just going to say I was in Walgreens earlier today. They made an announcement over the PA system that you could go back to the pharmacy with no appointment and get a vaccine.
Just get a vaccine.
So I think there's a lot of places that are available.
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that and encourage people to go.
Councilwoman, you can find,
yes.
Thank you. You can find more information on the Shawnee County Health Department's website. That's where I would go for more information as well, but the drugstore should have it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all, Mayor.
All right, we are in need of recessing into an executive session, but just as a reminder to the public, we have rescheduled our next week's meeting So there will not be a meeting next week. If the city attorney would help us by reading the parameters of the executive session.
The proposed motion would be to recess into executive session for 20 minutes to discuss employer-employee negotiations relating to the Police Department labor agreement as authorized by KSA 75-4319B3. The motion would include requesting the following staff to participate: City Manager Trout, Chief of Staff Cochran, HR Director Russell, Budget Director Wade, myself, Senior Assistant City Attorney Kuckelman, Chief of Litigation Starr, and Acting Chief Wheelis. No action will be taken when the meeting resumes.
We have heard the parameters. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Mayor.
Councilwoman Ortiz and Councilman Emerson seconds.
Yes.
Comments or questions? Seeing none, we proceed by voting to enter into this motion of recessing into executive session not to exceed 20 minutes. We proceed with the vote.
Council members Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager, Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Motion carries. We will allow a 5-minute recess for the council members to be able to have a break and to allow for the room to empty as we prepare for the executive session.
Christina, where did you? Okay, we're back coming out of our executive session. No action has been taken. There is no further action to be taken by this body this evening, so this meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Mike.